Hello everyone, it is I, the Witch of Paint. I apologize in advance for any background noise. There's very windy weather going on right now. But this week we are finally getting around to the last zodiac fairy, Capricorn, which is apparently a goat fish creature. Well, yeah, it's a goatfish. I don't understand why, but I am sure we will find out somehow in the depths of the internet. I'm sure this is going to be a wild one for sure, because how do you come up with a goatfish? Anyways, Capricorn goes on from the 22nd of December until the 19th of January, which does mean we are a little bit late, but I had art supplies to test out the last couple of videos, so can you blame me? Better late than never, after all. This zodiac is ruled by Saturn, which I don't think has appeared in any of my other zodiac fairy paintings so far, so yay, new planet! This fairy gets a fishtail because apparently Capricorn has one, which I still can't get over. I wasn't aware of it until I watched a video about zodiacs and it was just mentioned and I was like, wait, what? I thought it's just a goat. Nothing more, because in German the zodiac sign is called Steinbock, which just refers to a specific goat, particularly a male goat. And so I was a little bit confused why the zodiac sign has a fishtail attached to the goat. So I looked it up, and I did find quite a lot of different kind of things people say about it. The first kind of myth that I found goes as follows. Typhon is raging around the world, which is something that also came up for Pisces, I think. If you haven't watched that video, I guess you can go ahead and watch it now. See what it's about. Anyways, but for this one, the god of the wild, Pan, half man, half goat, saw him and, of course, got scared because Typhon is a scary guy, you know? And in order to escape, he jumped into a river, attempted to turn into a fish, but, well, he was panicking, so he wasn't, quite so focused on getting the transformation correct, and so he ended up with a fishtail that was attached to the upper body of a goat. And Zeus looked down upon this and thought, haha, that's funny, I'ma post this, and put the image of a goatfish into the sky, because Zeus is a mean bully. Then there was one source that says that the goatfish is the nymph Amalthea who nurtured Zeus when he was little, or rather, she provided him with milk because he didn't have his mum at the time. However, reading that got me thinking, but she's a goat, like a full goat. She doesn't have a fishtail, especially not if she's living in a cave. Unless the cave has a pool in it, which would give her a fishtail, but still, I'm pretty sure she's just a goat, and Wikipedia confirmed this and said she's an entirely different constellation that's not related to Capricornus whatsoever. Makes sense because she's a full goat, and not half a fish. I do like the one with Pan, though, kind of. It's just such a Zeus thing to do, Thinking, oh my gosh, that's so funny. I'm going to put a goatfish into the sky because we're gonna bully you forever for this, Pan. Okay, that's actually very mean. I feel bad for Pan. But it's also way more fun than Zeus creating weird creatures through kidnapping some innocent woman or something, But the association with a goatfish goes back way before the Greeks, or at least it apparently goes back that far. The Babylonians had decided that the constellation looked like their god Ea, also known as the god Enki, who is the god of arts, crafts, water, creation, trickery, mischief, fertility, and a few other things that I won't mention because the list is very long apparently. He was the god of lots of things. He does come from the oceans, and he brought all the things that he's god of to humans, arts and crafts and all the fun stuff that he's also the god of. Also, beware the Wikipedia article about him. It's somewhat spicy, if you know what I mean. Read at your own risk. Okay, now, don't get me wrong here, but looking at pictures of Enki, regardless of how often people say he is a goatfish, I don't see any particular picture that represents him as a goatfish. It's usually a man with a hat and water coming from his shoulders. Am I just looking this up wrong? Because there's lots of people that go in these articles like, yeah, there's lots of art depicting him as a goatfish, but then they don't show those images? Seems to me like, honestly, goatfish isn't his go-to form, you know? But then how did this come to be? Why is Capricorn a fish-tailed goat? Okay, fine. I found one mention of the symbols being the goat and the fish. So I guess Capricorn is just somebody deciding to fuse the two symbols, but they don't actually represent him because he doesn't take on the form of a goatfish. I don't know. I'm very confused by the zodiac sign. Unless I just wasn't looking hard enough for goatfish Enki. That's a possibility. I mean, it is generally true that the Greeks did get the whole goldfish thing from the Babylonians, just as the rest of its zodiac signs, or at least most of them, and then just found their own explanations for stuff that the Babylonians had their own explanations for. It's just, they just took it and copied it and renamed some things. Kinda like the Romans. Humans are so alike. Or maybe it's a bit difficult to explain why you decided that a zodiac sign is a goatfish. And maybe it doesn't require an explanation. I mean, Capricorn can simply be that cool goatfish that nobody really has an explanation for. A fun little creature there to stir the imagination of a people. Fun. If I'm completely honest, the constellation looks more like a smile to me. Like one that maybe the Cheshire Cat would give you. Maybe. Or an anime smile, I don't know. Or perhaps it's a boomerang. Or it could also be a very, very bent boat. Or a hammock. A magical hammock, maybe. One that takes you to a magical dream world. That would be interesting. But perhaps not as interesting as a goat with a fishtail. Even if you need a great deal of imagination to see a goatfish in the constellation. A fish? Maybe, if you just add a couple fins there. Might be more of a whale, to be honest. But goat? It is truly wild what humans can see in the stars if they just squint their eyes hard enough, apparently. Now, on to talking about this wonderful painting that I did for Capricorn. And since Capricorn is a goatfish, this fairy will be the only fairy in my zodiac lineup that gets a fishtail and tiny wings, since he won't be flying around through the skies, but rather through the seas, I guess. Kinda like penguins. Well, he bears no resemblance to penguins, aside from not being able to fly through the sky. Rather, he uses his wings as fins, kind of. I guess we are in an odd place for that, but it's alright, it's art, so I get to make things up. I had found my pose for him fairly quickly, and decided that I wanted to draw him jumping out of the water, and in a sort of half circle be just about to dive back in. Like his hands are already touching the water and there's already some splashes going on, because I like splashes of water. Although that did require me to draw a part of him upside down with his hands over his head, and, well, I am not very good with drawing people holding their arms above their heads. I just don't draw that sort of pose enough to get it right without a reference, and I also didn't use a reference for the pose, even though I should have, because I don't know how to draw people with their arms over their heads, but I figured I could make it look okay without one. And I mean, so long as nobody tries to check the anatomical correctness of the arms, all well and good, eh? Yes, I'm also aware that he isn't wearing anything on top. I thought it would be fun to mix things up, and instead of clothes covering him, he has glowing tattoos. I figured it would be a fun way to mix it up a little. That's my excuse. The background was super fun to paint, by the way. For wild ways that I painted in a mix of phthalo blue, indigo, and some blue mix I had on my palette, and then added some yellow ochre to give Saturn a reflection in the waves as they swoosh and swish around. It was very fun, even though technically they were like just tiny bent triangles. It was very fun. Then Saturn itself, that has like springs with fuzzy lines. It was so much fun, even if Saturn is not exactly a particularly colourful planet. It's very brown, with many different shades of brown-ish. Also going towards the yellow ochre kind of spectrum, but it is mostly brown. But it was still so much fun. You know, it's big, it has some interesting features and some very cool rings around it. Though, to be particularly honest, the rings made me struggle a little bit. After layer 1, I had no sketch to go off for their shape. Rings are just very confusing things. I tried to block them out, you know, and then draw the lines on top, but then it didn't look good, so I added water and blurred it out a little bit, and then that looked kind of okay. I'm not particularly happy with it, but the main planet, okay, the main planet looks awesome, in my opinion, if I do say so myself. Like, I love how I did the shadow. I really love it. It looks so great. I'm very proud of myself for that one. Keeping the roundness, though, that was hard. That was hard for no reason. I don't know. Even though I did the sketch for Saturn using a tape roll to kind of get a good circle going, I don't know. But the shadow is awesome. Anyways, I don't think that this painting has a truly ugly phase, as people like to call it. Unfinished phase, maybe, until the end. It was like, technically that's not a phase. But it didn't really have any point where I was just questioning if this was going to turn out looking alright. Though perhaps there are certain areas in the overall painting that are not quite dark enough. Particularly the sky, which despite the many layers I put into it with indigo and other blues, it still looks incredibly pale. But that's because watercolours just dry lighter than they look when they are wet. So I was happy with it when it was dark, but then dried very lightly, and I was too scared to add another layer because of reactivating paint and all that stuff. But it's alright. I mean, there is a giant planet in the sky that is reflecting the light of the sun onto the surface of, well, presumably a moon of the planet that probably doesn't exist in this shape and form. Anyways, for the mermaid, I made his body a blue that is leaning towards a dark turquoise colour in order to make the glowing tattoos stand out, because, I don't know, I like the glowing tattoos. Maybe they're not tattoos really per se, but natural kind of birthmark light sources for the dark depths of the sea. Whatever the case, I wanted them to stand out, so I also tried to leave a little border around them when I was painting in his body, just to make it look as though they were, you know, actually glowing. Later I will add some metallic paints over them, because I haven't used my metallic paints in a very long time. But first, the rest of the mermaid had to be painted in, because otherwise, why add glitter if you're going to be covering it with shadows? Defeats the point. I decided he was going to get a pink fishtail with an orange fin at the end, because I thought that he should be a very colourful and bright merman. Goat. Fairy. Creature. I don't know what this hybrid creature is supposed to be. Anyway, looking back through the video, it's kind of funny how I gave him a non-human skin tone, and then when it came to the hair I just went with brown. It looks good on him, but seriously, brown? I couldn't come up with anything better in my head. Well, apparently not. In my head, he just has brown hair, and so I gave him brown hair. But let's not be mad at myself for picking a regular hair colour. Maybe it's just changes colour when it's underwater. That would actually be kind of fun. Hair that changes when you go underwater. I mean, it's just colour-changing hair. I want that now. Well, either way, he looks great, so, you know. Also, that little goatee is very cute on him. Wouldn't swap that for anything. So once I had him sufficiently shaded, despite the lack of actual light sources, aside from the planet behind him, which I didn't count as a light source for him, apparently. Very confusing for me too. Anyways, I whipped out my metallic watercolour paints and I started by painting the tattoos on the tail and body of the merman fairy goat creature. But then I decided, heck, let's go crazy, and I painted the sea, added purple highlights to the fishtail and splashed stars around, and also water splashes, blue little stuff, and also added some yellow metallic paints to the water because there is the reflection of Saturn in it, and sometime between that I also used my silver and gold inks, and well, I'm not sure if the gold ink was actually safe to use at that point. It's over 2 years old, and I don't know, the binding liquid has turned green, and usually that's not normal. But it's just ink, so I just gave it a very good shake and used it anyway, because, I don't know, wonder if that was a mistake or not. Yeah, it's still golden ink. I bet it won't start growing mold on my paper, right? Right? Anyways, then I accidentally forgot to properly wipe off the excess silver ink on my gloss tip pen, which resulted in Well, and a bit of a splash of silver ink on the constellation, which I attempted to, get off the paper again, but obviously it leaves some glitter stuff behind, so I decided, okay, we're going to put glitter around this constellation as well, so that it looks like it's shiny and it's always meant to be. And unlike last week, I managed to put the signature on the painting rather than the tape, so no trying to fix up my signature this week. Yippee! And with that, the tape is taken off of our beautiful painting and we can admire the final result together. Yay! I really like this fairy merman goat creature thing, partially because it's a mess of creatures, but also the pose, the colours, the glowing tattoos, even the slightly wonky arms. The painting is just so nice, And I'm so proud of my Saturn in the background, like, really proud. Definitely a very fun painting overall, and with that, my Zodiac Fairy series is kind of done, at least for this Zodiac cycle. So it was just the last one for this Zodiac cycle, with the one with the Greeks and Romans and stuff, the Latin ones. I have other Zodiac signs that I can look into and do. Anyways, thank you for coming along on the ride for this awesome painting series. We have learned and developed a lot of new painting skills throughout the last year, and maybe I will eventually make a video where I walk through other Zodiac, or where I just look through the Zodiac fairies that I did in order of me making them. Maybe one day. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, comment something about your theories regarding the goatfish. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, and there's also the sources that I use to try and piece together Capricorn's story down below. As well as my social media links, a link to my Twitch channel if you're into watching an artist mess around with paints and other things live. But for the time being, I am the Witch of Paint, and I shall see you all next Sunday. Bye! Well, look who's splish splash splashed into the end of the video. Yay, well done. I do have some artics for you, so have fun with those. The first story for the Greeks that I found was that Typhon was raging to the Middle Bronze Age, where the Babylonians, let's pronounce it correctly, huh? Huh? You can really hear that noise of a storm, can't you? Very confusing. I whipped out my metallic watercolor.